All right, so Jake Raw, right? I just found out, and I want to make a video as soon as I read it. I also tweeted it out, so if you guys haven't checked that out, you can. But I just found out, according to Albert Breer, he did a mailbag yesterday. And someone asked him what the deal is Sean McVay coming back? And he said he thinks he is. It's a 51-49 situation, but he thinks that he's going to be back. But what was most interesting to me is what he basically brought to our attention, things that we didn't know. I didn't know this. I was never told this. Raheem Morris was being prepared to take over as the head coach last season, before this season started, if Sean McVay left. He was the option. Now you might say, Jake, that's not a big deal. He's a defensive coordinator. They're just off a Super Bowl win. It's a late off season because they played into February. No, this is a big deal. Okay. This means something. And he said that I can't imagine anything has changed. So if Sean McVay doesn't come back, I'm going to go on record and say I not only want Raheem Morris to be the head coach, and I definitely really want Thomas Brown, but I think right now I'm starting to lean towards Raheem Morris. I'm not only going to say that, but I think it's going to happen. I think Raheem Morris, as long as he doesn't get a head coaching gig, I think it's going to happen. I think he's going to be the head coach for the LA Rams if Sean McVay leaves. Now, keep in mind, Albert Breer said he thinks he stays. Here's one thing to keep in mind with Raheem Morris. It was a while ago he was a coach. And you want to talk about a while ago? Let's put it into this reasoning here. He was the head coach the last time Josh Freeman was a starting quarterback in the NFL. Now, his first year didn't go all that well, but his second year, he turned it around with a completely new All-22 and went 10-6. The next year, bad year. They went 4-12. End of the year, he gets fired. A bunch of guys get fired, not the GM, Mark Dominic, but he gets fired. Okay, they didn't spend money on getting and improving that team. But one thing I noticed from year 1 to year 2, and you could look at for yourself, is that they were a bottom of the league defense when Raheem Morris took over in his first year. Okay. And then his second year, he had turned a bottom of the league defense into 9th in the league in defense. To me, Raheem Morris has shown you in the past, he can be a leader of men. If you go back and you look at Tampa Bay, it took the time that they got Brady to the time they got Raheem Morris. They did not have a double-digit winner as a head coach. Schiano, no. Okay. Dirk Cutter, no. It took Bruce Arians and Tom Brady to do that. And one could argue even Jameis Winston would have been a massive upgrade. Here's the thing. Josh Freeman showed promise. But the thing that hurt Raheem Morris is Josh Freeman's play took a nosedive. It didn't matter how good the defense was. It didn't matter how much Raheem Morris had improved it. He took a nosedive in play. They didn't bring back LeGarrette Blount. They didn't go out and sign Vincent Jackson until after Raheem Morris, so they didn't have a great weapon for Josh Freeman. And, no big deal. We're going to move on from Josh Freeman. Now we have Josh McCown. That's not a big upgrade. If he had at least Jameis Winston, imagine if he had Brady, but if he had at least Jameis Winston, he would have been fine. And that is what ended up happening with Raheem Morris. Goes on to the Falcons. He goes through the whole run of the mill, playing, having some offensive coaching, some defensive coaching. He's rounded himself out. He is the Rams defensive coordinator. He won a Super Bowl his first year as a defensive coordinator. I think it's time that this guy deserves another head coaching job. And if it's not with the Rams, he deserves to go and be with the Colts. He deserves to go and be with the Broncos. I think he has paid his dues. I think he's earned it. I think it's overdue. And I actually like this. I like it for the Rams if he comes back. I like it for any team that goes and gets him. He deserves it. And I'm sorry, but I know he gets a lot of flack, and I know I'm one of his biggest defenders on this platform, but you have to understand why I'm one of his biggest defenders on this platform. When you look at what he's done, what he's had to do, this is not the defense that he wants to run. This is not the defense that he was running. So for people that are saying Raheem Morris's defense, this is what Sean McVay set out to run. This is when he went out and got Brandon Staley, who was a guy who came from the Vic Fangio tree. He wanted to have a Vic Fangio modified style defense. So when Brandon Staley gets there, that's what they try to run. The same type of thing that stifled Jared Goff and Sean McVay's run in the NFC. That's what he wanted to do. When Brandon Staley left and he became the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, Raheem Morris came in there knowing full well, we need you to run this defense. And he took on this responsibility. He took on the challenge. And instead of getting credit for, leading them to a Super Bowl, because you can say what you will about the offense, but the defense is a big reason why they won Super Bowl 56. They sacked Joe Burrow, 8 times? You can say, oh, well, that's what happens when you have Von Miller, Aaron Donald, and, Leonard Floyd. And you would be right. But also think about what he had to do, the different things that he had to change and he had to fix on the fly. I mean, let's not forget, folks, they had a 7th round special teams ace in Nick Scott have to take over at one of the biggest roles on the defense and play safety. Oh, and by the way, they also took Eric Weddle out of retirement. So you can say Raheem Morris had this and that and all of that. He also had those two guys. Nick Scott played well down the stretch, of course, and Eric Weddle did what he could. But that's not like having Ed Reed and Troy Polamalu back there. And thus, it put a lot of pressure on everyone else to succeed. Raheem Morris made key adjustments that stifled Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and so forth, and that offense. And it allowed them to win that Super Bowl. Don't get me wrong, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, they deserve all the credit in the world. They were great when they had to be. But let's be honest here. Raheem Morris doesn't get enough credit for being a guy who was taken as an interim head coach who had the Falcons. He took over for Dan Quinn, had the Falcons competing hard. No one goes and tries to get him as a head coach. He only really interviews with the Falcons. Rams pick him up late in the process. He becomes the defensive coordinator after Staley leaves. And all right, Raheem, you're in here. Run this defense. Don't run your defense. Don't run your philosophy. Run this defense. And so he runs this defense and literally gets to the top of the mountain with said defense. By the end of the year, it took a while because, again, the guy's running a defense he's never had to run before. He has brand new players, brand new team. And by the end of the year, they're operating, they're clicking on all cylinders. They're making plays when they have to. And let's be honest here. How many guys can say, I went and became a defensive coordinator, and in year 1, I won a Super Bowl? It was the perfect storm because obviously they needed Matthew Stafford. They needed other guys. But you can't just discredit what Raheem Morris did, especially with this defense this past year. It was the only redeeming quality about the Rams in 2022. Their defense kept them in every single game except for the Chargers game the entire year going into the fourth quarter. Who else can say that? What 5-12 team can attest to that? So then I go into the leadership qualities, right? And you talk about Raheem Morris and the leadership, and he's already been a head coach, so he knows what it's like. He's been around Sean McVay. You've seen it. You've seen Kevin O'Connell. You've seen Brandon Staley. You've seen their post-game speeches to their locker room, all of that. They get a lot from Sean McVay. I'd imagine when you're in a room with Sean McVay, it's pretty infectious. You can pick up a lot of what he's doing, and you know he's doing it the right way because what he's done, it works. He won a Super Bowl. He's been in 2, right? But with Raheem Morris, having guys like Jalen Ramsey going to bat for you, cursing up there at the podium and saying, look, this guy is the real deal. Okay? Raheem Morris is him. He's the guy. He's the man. We believe in him. We trust him. We fight for him. When you have guys like him and you have guys like Bobby Wagner, okay, these are guys that are playing meaningless games at the end of the season. They play all 17 games. Bobby Wagner is going to be, potentially an all-pro this year. We'll see what ends up happening with the NFL, but he is an all-pro. According to PFF, he's an all-pro. Okay, Wagner had a great year. Jalen Ramsey, underrated season. It was not his best year, but in a lot of ways, he did a lot of different things better than he has in the past. So you can say he's gotten burned a lot. I would disagree. I could challenge you on that. He's not lost a step. He's fine. And Raheem would challenge you on that. But the point is, you have these 2 veterans. You have a guy playing the cornerback position, which that's been known. Guys want to get paid. Guys care about what, care about themselves, okay? Not all cornerbacks, but it has been that. But you have Jalen Ramsey playing every down like it's his last. Why do you think he's that motivated? Well, I'll tell you, the defensive coordinator has something to do with it. So, yes, if Sean McVay leaves, I'm all for Raheem Morris. And when I got this news, when I saw this news, because this is news, no one's talking about this. This needs to be talked about. This is significant from Albert Breer. He was hearing, he already knew the plan is that he was going to take over as head coach if McVay left last year. And he said, he can't see that being any different this year. If that's the case, then man, Raheem, calm on down if Sean McVay leaves. I don't waste any time. I don't even interview anybody. I don't have to. I go right after Raheem Morris. That's what I do. Because the players love him. The players play hard for him. He already has head coaching experience. And he's already had a season where he won 10 games for an organization that before, after that, didn't win 10 games until way later. Okay? The proof is in the pudding. Raheem Morris got a raw deal. Okay? He got a raw deal. They went on. They moved on from Greg Schiano. I'll tell you what I remember most about Greg Schiano. His defense is bull rushing the victory formation, mainly because, well, the other team was always in victory formation. They lost a lot of games, but that's what I remember. Raheem Morris, I remember a team, it was a brand new team, starts off pretty poorly, year one, building things up. Year two, makes significant strides as a defense. They win 10 games. They didn't make the playoffs. They win 10 games, right? And what I remember from Greg Schiano is his defense bull rushing victory formations. Remember that weird thing? You might have forgotten about it. I just jogged your mind. That's what I remember from Schiano, who came after Raheem Morris. So why did Raheem Morris never get an opportunity? I don't know. Why is Lovie Smith and David Culley 1 year hires? Why do they just get fired like that? Because there's a bunch of stupid organizations out there that don't know how to run their team. It's just like drafting a quarterback and not giving him 3 years or even 2 years to progress and see something. You just pull the trigger. You're done. That's it. Well, with that culture in the NFL, yeah, Raheem Morris has had a hard time finding a job. But when I said that he will be in play for a head coaching job, and so will Thomas Brown, I meant it. And both of them are going to be interviewing for head coaching jobs. Right now, Raheem Morris already has 2. He's interviewing tomorrow with the Colts. That's done. Signed, sealed, delivered. He has an interview with the Colts tomorrow to be their head coach. If the guy's already interviewing around, if he already has the head coaching experience, and maybe he was too young at the time, but he had the 10-win season that no one talks about, no one cares to talk about, no one thinks about it. If Tom Brady never goes to Tampa, maybe that's still the best season, win percentage-wise that they've had. I mean, think about it. That's a real possibility. If Tom Brady never goes with Bruce Arians, maybe Tampa doesn't have that. They definitely don't have the Super Bowl, but maybe, they don't even have the 10-win season. I know they were building something. I'm not trying to take too much away, but it just shows you that Raheem Morris wasn't just a guy who, had a season where he went 1-15, then 2-14, and then had a decent 5-11, 6-10 season where they were in most of their games. No, he had a 10-6 season that no one wants to talk about. He's constantly, shamed, criticized, but yet you have these Hall of Fame type of players like Ramsey and Bobby Wagner that play hard for him and back him. No one gave up on him. He kept that team together. They were still playing hard in the last game of the year, week 18, in the freezing cold in Seattle with nothing on the line. I'm just saying, take a moment to think about it, digest what I told you, and drop a comment. I want to hear what you guys have to say. I know a lot of people in here do not like Raheem Morris. They want the 2 third-round picks. Let's look a little bit. Let's take a little bit away from that. All right, let's steer from that. Right. Let's forget about the picks. Let's not worry about all that. Let's talk about what this person, what this human can do in the building, what he can do as a leader, what he can do as a coach. And let's just really think about this, because I think when you really think about it, you look at his, rapport, you look at his resume, I think it's all there for Raheem Morris to succeed. And if Sean McVay retires, he's already come out and said, folks, that it's not the end. He's 36. He recognizes that. This would be a year off, maybe 2, maybe 3, but he would want to come back. the best way to make sure Sean McVay does coach again is to stay in-house. Because you could easily, if Raheem Morris doesn't do all that well, you could easily transition back over to McVay. It's a lot better than the other options. What, are you going to trade draft picks to get Sean Payton out of retirement? We already went over that. You know, as much as I like Thomas Brown, and I do like Thomas Brown a lot, would not be against hiring him as the head coach. He's never had head coaching experience. If you're worried about not having a guy that has the experience, Raheem Morris is not somebody you should be worried about. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. I'll have another video coming out about the Big Five: Jalen Ramsey, AD, Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, and Bobby Wagner soon, because you guys voted on that. But I had to drop this video first because I just saw this, and this is my immediate reaction of the idea that Raheem Morris could actually become the Rams head coach. I love it. I'm hoping he gets an opportunity, whether it's with the Rams or not. And I selfishly would love him back as defensive coordinator because, let's be honest here, again, his defense that he's running is not his defense, but I think he runs it well, and I think it works when the offense is actually doing something. When it's not doing something, then people start to wonder, but it did work the entire year. They had one game where there was a mishap, but you got to give the guy his credit. You got to give the guy his props, and I'm hoping, for McVay to stay, but if not, consider me on the Raheem Morris head coach train. Later, guys.